Welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us. My name is John Lester. I'm the publisher of the Shelton-Mason County Journal.
Hi, I'm Heidi McCutcheon. I'm the president CEO of the Shelton-Mason County Chamber of Commerce. We're very excited to host tonight's forum and also would like to thank our partners, MasonWebTV, powered by Hood Canal Communications, and the North Mason Chamber of Commerce.
It's my pleasure to introduce the candidates for Mason County PUD 3 Commissioner District 1. Welcome to Julie Tucson, Marty Crow, Randy Lewis, and Brianna Sheep.
We appreciate each of you for your willingness to participate in this event and for your commitment to our community. We'll begin with your introductory statements, and you'll each have 2 minutes to answer. Julie, as your name is listed first on the ballot, we'll begin with you. So your time begins now.
Hi, I'm Julie Tucson, and I want to serve as your District 1 PUD 3 Commissioner. The role of the Commissioner is not to run the utility, rather it's to hire the manager and monitor the budget and set policies and rates. Why should you vote for me? Mason County is where I grew up and where I chose to live most of my life. The upcoming vacancy is timely for me, as well I've always had a passion for our county and a desire to serve. I am now at the point in my life and career where I have the time and drive to be your commissioner. As such, I will work to keep electricity as affordable and reliable as possible while complying with Washington state legislative mandates. I'll work with statewide public power groups to ensure public utility districts maintain local control granted by Title 54, and I'll support continued deployment of fiber optic broadband services to underserved and unserved areas of Mason County. Energy is changing. Clean energy, electric vehicles, supply, and even where and how we buy energy will evolve over the years and will require careful consideration. I'm not afraid to ask questions to get the information needed to make educated decisions. I understand budgets, supply chain, and people. I believe building relationships is vital to the success and look forward to building successful relationships with the community, PUD personnel, and energy organizations. I believe I am the all-around candidate and I would appreciate your vote.
Great, thank you, Julie. Next up, we will hear from Marty Crow. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here on the Chamber Forum. I do appreciate the time. I look forward to becoming a District 1 leader for the PUD 3. I think that some of my business experience and my relationships with people in the community will help me build strong support for the district leadership. And I think the leadership team has done a great job over the years. I know we have a lot of new things going on technology-wise and regulatory issues, both state, local, and federal, and also here in the region. So I think there's a lot of support that's going to be needed and some big shoes to fill with Linda leaving the position. I know she's been very active in both regional and federal level organizations, and I hope to help fulfill that leadership role going forward. I look for your vote and hope you recognize my name on signs here soon. Thank you.
Next up, we will hear from Randy. Randy, you have 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Randy Lewis. I do want to say that my first, second, and third priorities will be looking out for the best interest of the ratepayers. Like everyone else here, I'm a native of Mason County, but I've spent decades out in the rest of the country, mainly with big corporations. I know how to build relationships. I know how to relate, but I'm a local boy. I grew up here. At heart, I consider myself a country boy, but I did bring back with me when I retired back home. I believe I can make a case that I have a unique set of skills that will serve the PUD well. I've attended basically almost every PUD meeting the last 5 years, so I think I can demonstrate that I've had great interest there. Since I've retired and come back, I'm an advocate for the vulnerable in the community, and I can document that. And that will include PUD. Two of the direct responsibilities of the commissioners are rate setting and budget. And those roles will reflect who we want to be, how we treat each other, particularly those that are not as fortunate as others. Electricity is the lifeblood of the community. The future ebb and flow of electricity has an associated correlation to the future ebb and flow of money. That's my wheelhouse. And finally, I've got 18 seconds. In my line of work, if you can't explain the drivers of everything you've analyzed, you've wasted your time. So I am very good at relating, talking to people that so-called laymen, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy. Brianna, 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Brianna Sheets, and I am running for your PUD 3 Commissioner, District 1. I didn't grow up in Mason County, but I did spend my summers up in Mason Lake. Oh, I'm sorry, Collins Lake. And I fell in love with Mason County then and moved here 12 years ago. Since then, I have been given everything I can to this community, from Fill the Truck events to boosters to youth sports. Any way I can, I have helped out. And being a PUD 3 commissioner is just kind of a natural transition for me. I look at that as another way to serve the community. As a PUD 3 commissioner, you are a public utility district commissioner. So I would be essentially working for you guys. I would always be approachable. And I would always have your best interest in heart. I love where we live, and I want it to be a place that my kids want to grow up as well and raise their families. So if you vote for me, I will always have your guys' best interest at heart.
We'll now move into the questions that we have prepared for you. As Julie provided her introductory statement first, Marty, you'll be asked the first question, followed by Randy and then Brianna, and then finish up with Julie. You have 90 seconds to respond. Our first question is, millions of dollars worth of PUD electrical and telecommunication infrastructure is needed to meet the growth in Mason County over the next 5 years. What approach would you take to meet the legal duty to serve the new load while mitigating impacts to the existing and new customers? You have 2 minutes.
Very good question, John. I think a couple of things come to mind when I think about growth and development of this system. To support that growth, I think historically there's been a strong focus on growth pays for growth. I think there has to be a balance for that. And when I say that, in that there has to be a combination of fees attributed to new growth, and then also some portion of the common rates paid by all ratepayers to support growth. And I don't know what those percentages are, but it has to be normalized, because historically growth has been created and supported through the normal rates and fees, as opposed to additional capital infrastructure fees. Those are relatively new to the utility. I do think that they are required because the cost of technology is growing exponentially. The supply chain costs have gone up dramatically. And I think there's going to be a continued fine tuning of the balancing between fees for the new connections and a portion of the current rates paid and daily usage rates paid to support the development of new construction and technology going forward. So as I want to summarize, I think it's a combination of fees coming from both the newcomers and some ratepayers that have been paying rates historically.
Thank you, Marty. Okay, now we'll go ahead and move on to Randy. To you, Randy, the question is, you have 90 seconds to respond. Millions of dollars worth of PUD electrical and telecommunication infrastructure is needed to meet the growth in Mason County over the next 5 years. What approach would you take to meet the legal duties to serve the new load while mitigating impacts to existing and new customers?
Well, like Marty said, there is a limited amount of revenue available. One is rates, the other is fees, and also they've been accruing revenue by adding to the debt. So those are your basic options. The PUD has done a nice job with their fiber hoods, expanding the high-tech fiber to the areas, including rural, which I think consensus is that is not a luxury anymore, it's a necessity. And building out their fiber hood they created these fiber hoods, and basically the people benefiting from that particular fiber hood fund it. When they put in new transformers, things like that, then there's a discussion on, okay, how much of that is for the common good and how much benefits the people directly? And I've had some interesting discussions on that with the finance folks. What is fair? As far as rates go, like everybody mentions, cost of things are going up, interest rates are going up. That's going to ultimately, if they persist, is going to ultimately affect the debt burden. And I guess the question is, what would I do? A lot of moving parts. I don't think, and Brianna mentioned this, I read her comments in the journal, which I thought her comments were really good. But she had mentioned, and not to criticize necessarily, but expenses have to be looked at. Make sure they're not, quote, she used the word frivolous, but I would say you need to, they say they're zero-based budgeting, which the commissioners have to approve. And I would say examine those carefully. What is necessary to provide clean, safe, and reliable energy? Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Julie, the question to you, and you'll have 2 minutes to respond. Millions of dollars worth of PUD electrical and telecommunication infrastructure is needed to meet the growth of Mason County over the next 5 years. What approach would you take to meet the legal duty to serve the new load while mitigating the impacts on existing and new customers?
I agree that it needs to be a balance of things. It's the connection fees, the rates. There's a lot of things to take into consideration. I don't know all the ins and outs of that, and there's going to be a learning curve for anybody that's becomes the new commissioner. So we definitely need to look at costs and make sure that we are getting value for our dollar. And I think that grants can play a role in that, and that's part of the PUD administration. And so I would encourage us to look for and apply for all the grants we can get to help mitigate those costs. Thank you.
Brianna, millions of dollars worth of PUD electrical and telecommunication infrastructure is needed to meet the growth of Mason County over the next 5 years. What approach would you take to meet the legal duties to serve the new load while mitigating impacts of existing and new customers? You have 90 seconds.
And I'm right along with Julie on that answer. I would definitely, a lot of grants are available. Washington State and the federal government is very, very generous with their grants, and applying for all of those and staying on top of that would definitely be first and foremost. And we are at a spot where rates do have to be passed along to the ratepayer, but keeping that to a minimum would be my top priority. A lot of people are of the mindset it's just a few extra dollars a month, but you know, we have a large family, we have lots of kids, so a few dollars a month staggered on top of a few dollars a month really adds up. And it would be my due diligence to make sure that we could avoid that by reviewing current budgets. Where can we cut, where can we save, and how can we have the least amount of impact on the ratepayers?
Thank you, Brown. Marty, as you started these questions, we're going to give you 30 seconds to be able to follow up or respond simply.
All right, thank you. One thing I didn't touch on, as Randy mentioned, is servicing some of the requirements of debt, and then also mentioned were grants. I do know that we have bonds, and we have used those in the past. I do think that, you know, using debt to support future growth is reasonable as long as the interest rates remain reasonable. Grant funding is obviously an opportunity for both state and federal, as Brianna mentioned. It is one of those things that will run out. I think as the funding dries up from both federal level and state, it may last another year, but it is limited. That's all I have to say. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your responses. Our next question will go to Randy first, followed by Brianna, Julie, and then Marty. Randy, the PUD has over 40 years of clean audits and decades of awards in excellent financial reporting. How would you work to ensure this commitment continues, especially in the face of a pending recession? You have 90 seconds for your answer.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time discussing different things with the finance department. They're doing a phenomenal job. They give me all the information I need for whatever questions I have. And they deserve all these clean audits. So there's no question there. But that's separate from what is the best use of your resources. You know, how do you make best use of the resources? Sorry. And as far as expense allocation is a big thing. Like we've talked about before, when you put in new infrastructure of whatever type, expense allocation is a hotly debated and discussed topic in all organizations. And I would say what is fair, what is reasonable, and a lot of these decisions, policy decisions, are made by the commissioners. Staff is there and they've done an excellent job providing information, all the numbers, all the information, their treasure troves of information. But ultimately, if you're talking about policy, that's up to the commissioners reflecting the will of the ratepayers that elected them. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Brianna, you're next. Again, please tell us. The PUD has over 40 years of clean audits and decades of awards in excellent financial reporting. How would you work to ensure this commitment continues, especially in the face of a pending recession? You have 90 seconds.
I don't think recession and clean accounting go hand in hand necessarily. They've got a phenomenal team within their accounting department. And it would just be us making sure that we keep the best possible staff in there. They're dotting their I's and crossing their T's and continuing to do what they do while getting the support that they need from us to continue to do what they do.
Very good, thank you. Julie, same question to you. Looking at the 40 years of clean audits and excellence in financial reporting, how would you work to ensure this commitment continues, especially in the face of a pending recession?
Well, I would keep, close review of the budget to make sure everything's in line there. I think that the biggest challenge is probably going to be keeping a qualified workforce, and that succession planning has to be part of the priorities for the PUD staff to ensure that they're passing along the information needed to keep those audits clean. So that's pretty much it. Review, keep an eye on the budget, qualified workforce, and succession planning, because they're doing a great job.
Very good, thank you. Randy, as you answered this question first, you have 30 seconds if you have anything else to say on the subject.
Yeah, those are good points by Brianna and Julie. I was kind of hesitating because, yeah, the clean audits are not necessarily tied in with policy making and things like that. And yeah, you got to have great staff, which they do. And as far as succession planning, they do a great job there. They replaced Joel Meyer with Lynn Eaton, and they basically trained her for a year on that, and I'm out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Brianna, you'll answer this next question first. You have 90 seconds to respond. The question is, as a public utility, the PUD uses third-party specialists to develop rate philosophies and recommendations that are most fair and economical for all of its customer classes. How would you respond to the pressures from the ratepayers to the lower rates in the face of rising costs?
The PUD's done a phenomenal job with staying in line with the rest of the state as far as what their ratepayers pay. So we have to have faith in how those rates are set. In regard to rising costs, I mean, unfortunately, that's inevitable. The PUD labor market is stiff competition across the state. We are actually have lower paid staffing than a lot of the other PUDs across the state. So there's going to be a struggle to continue to keep amazing staff, but keep the rates down, and not continue to have to raise them. But the systems that they have in place right now, outside looking in, seem to be working effectively. And I don't think that's anything that should be changed. And it's, people get really passionate when they have an opinion, but don't have an understanding behind where that opinion's formulated. And that's just basically where we need to come in as commissioners and be as relatable as we can and be willing to explain what those, what's not understood, basically.
Okay, Brianna. Julie, this question is to you. As a public utility, the PUD uses third-party specialists to develop rate philosophies and recommendations that are most fair and economical to all of its customer classes. How would you respond to the pressures from ratepayers to lower rates in the face of these rising costs? You have 90 seconds.
I agree with Brianna. We need to be articulate and transparent. The PUD is nonprofit. We're not out to make a profit. Our rates are equal to or below the surrounding areas, in some cases below in our surrounding areas. And I think that everyone understands that, you know, the supply chain issues do force costs to rise, and we can do everything we can to mitigate those, but there are some things that are just out of our control. So I think just being open, transparent, and being willing to explain what the rates include is the answer. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Julie. Now, Marty, you have 90 seconds. As a public utility, the PUD uses third-party specialists to develop rate philosophies and recommendations that are most fair and economical for all of its customer classes. How would you respond to the pressures from the ratepayers to lower rates in the face of rising costs?
Thanks, John. I do believe that the technology used by these consultants that develop rate models are really based on regional load and regional distribution. I think most people know that almost all of our load comes directly from BPA. And I'm looking at the operating expenses for 2020, and 45% of our costs here at the utility are load-based, they're power. There's the remaining is split into a number of buckets, but the remaining 18% is also taxes. So the things we really have control over are the power, which is 45%, and the operating expenses. And I think people have talked a little bit to the operating expenses. There may be some opportunity there to shave, but I also heard somebody mention the labor markets are tight, material side's really growing, the cost escalation. So I really think we need to focus on managing our preference power privilege to buy BPA power at the lowest possible rates in the world. And as many of our utilities across the state do, they do produce lower utility end user rates than we do. We aren't the lowest in the state. We're not the highest in the utility group, public utility group, but there may be some opportunity there. And that comes from, there's a combination of factors. Many of them have to do with how much load there is per line mile of distribution line. There's a lot of factors. You get higher density neighborhoods, the cost may be slightly different on a per kilowatt hour basis than it is in, you know, light dense neighborhoods. But commercial load is different than residential. So all those things have to be looked at when you look at rates and how they affect the users. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Marty. Randy, you'll have 90 seconds to respond. As a public utility, the PUD uses third-party specialists to develop rate philosophies and recommendations that are most fair and economical for all those different customer classes. How would you respond to pressures from the ratepayers to lower rates in the face of rising costs?
When I talk to folks about my candidacy, I do not say I promise to lower rates. Like the others have mentioned, there are factors outside our control. And maybe the best we can do is slow down the increase in rates. Not that we're not going to try to lower rates. And I've looked at the documentation from the consultants. One word that I see is the word fair. Well, fair is in the eye of the beholder. That's a very subjective metric. And I think it may behoove us to, and I have looked at it. I think it really has to relate to local, and like we've mentioned, the top of the org chart, if you look at any PUD3 annual statement, are the ratepayers. So what is fair, what isn't fair? How do you provide equity, whatever that means, when what they call different classes of ratepayers? Good question. It's to mention that the per unit rates, yeah, they're comparable with the surrounding communities, but there's been some discussion I've seen on the fixed rates that's being charged per month. How do those compare to the others? And as far as being a nonprofit, yes, but on the other hand, this is a monopoly. There's no competitive market pressure on the PUD. I'm out of time.
Thank you, Randy. Graham, as you started with, the first question, you'll get 30 seconds to be able to give your final thoughts on that. So you have 30 seconds.
I guess the only thing I'd like to add is a lot of times people are upset because they don't feel heard, and their ability to be heard is really, really, really important to me. So as a PUD3 commissioner, I would definitely make an effort to make sure that everybody does feel heard and take the time to explain what they don't understand.
Thank you.
Okay, Julie, our last question will go to you first, followed by Marty, Randy, and Brianna. You have 90 seconds to respond. The question is, the electric and telecom industries are extremely technical, and the PUD employs highly professional and technically capable staff. Tell us your strategy for ensuring excellence in overall performance while still relying on staff expertise for technical and day-to-day operational issues.
So hopefully I understood the question correctly. So the day-to-day operations of the PUD falls to the staff of the PUD. That falls under the manager. So I guess our position, the position of the PUD commissioner, would be to ensure that we have a qualified manager who is making an inclusive workplace where people want to work, and that we are making sure that we are in line with similar positions throughout our area, so that the PUD will be a place that people will want to come to work, and we can attract those kind of people to keep it operating at the high level that it has. Thank you.
Thank you. Marty, please tell us your strategy for ensuring excellence in overall performance for the PUD while still relying on staff expertise for technical and day-to-day operational issues.
I think, as mentioned by Julie, we have commissioners that are responsible to make sure we have the right leadership within the organization, primarily with the GM. I think those technology positions, whether in their electrical distribution technology or the telecom industry, they have a combination of engineering technology people that work within those systems and know their business. I think it's the role of the responsibility of the leadership team to make sure the right people are developed and grown within the organization, to support those roles as they become vacated, as our team retires over the years. I know that's a big phenomenon that's going on in the utility industry, is a high level of retirement. But I think one thing that I've learned in my years in business is look to other organizations that do similar work and try to emulate what they do, because there's a lot of people doing some really cool technology things out there that we can learn from as an organization, as a utility. So that's what I would encourage the leadership in the utility to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy, you're next. Please tell us your strategy for ensuring excellence in overall performance while still relying on staff expertise for technical and day-to-day operational issues.
Well, that's basically an HR question. Annette has assembled a great leadership team, including Michelle Endicott, who does the HR work. I want to mention Sherry Speak, who runs finance. I've had a lot of discussions with her, but you need to be clear. These are the professionals, and they do the work. They provide the information. That's not up to the commissioners to be the professionals in those areas. Although personally, I am technically oriented. I can speak some of their language, and in my wheelhouse, I can take technical electrical concepts and convert them to how does that affect the flow of money, future cash flows, that sort of thing under different scenarios. But to be clear, that's not the job of the commissioners. The job of the commissioners is to make policy, given the excellent information that you get from the professionals on staff, which by the way there are. And all you can do is make sure you're competitive with surrounding communities and similar. And I like Marty's idea. And it's not just emulate other utilities, it's emulate other types of organizations. What kinds of things are they're doing that can be adopted? And I am out of time again. Thank you.
Thank you. Brianna, please tell us your strategy for ensuring excellence in overall performance while still relying on staff expertise for technical and day-to-day operations.
That would definitely fall upon, the current management within PUD. They've done a fantastic job with not only hiring, but retaining some phenomenal staff. And it would, be our job to have faith in the people that are set to be in charge of each department. As far as the lineman side goes, you've got each one of those that do an immense amount of schooling to get to where they are. And then you've got the customer service side who oh gosh, my head. You've got the customer service side who that management has done a phenomenal job handpicking people to fit the position, to fill the needs. You've got the telecommunication side that's rapidly expanding, but they're a little bit different from the lineman side as to where a lot of that can be taught on the job. There's not a telecommunication school to go to learn how to do fiber optics. So I think just us having faith in the management and being able to back them up and ask questions when something doesn't make sense, and hold them accountable is the key.
Great, thank you. Julie, as you answered the question first, you have 30 seconds for final thoughts if you'd like to.
I think we're all pretty much on the same page on that. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. This concludes our questions for the candidates for Mason County Commissioner District 3. We'll now move into our closing statements, where each of you will have 2 minutes. And Marty, you're going to have the honor to be able to go first, followed by Randy, and then Brianna, and then finish up with Julie.
Thank you, John. I'll keep it brief. I just want to say that I would be excited to have the opportunity to represent the ratepayers of District 1 for PUD 3. I think my experience and background in operations gives me the insight to be able to look at critical problems looking forward and help guide and support the leadership as they develop answers to those questions going forward. There's a lot of unknowns in front of us from a technology perspective, also from labor shortage issues that may arise as the market continues to shrink. So I'm here to help and here to represent our ratepayers in District 1 and would like to see their vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Randy, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, as far as the personnel issue, I also want to say I've been part of organizations such as PUD, that's basically a corporation, although PUD is a monopoly. Not only technical expertise and knowledge and all that is important when you pick employees, Another important aspect is how well do they fit the organization? And here it's not just the PUD, how well do they fit the community? Are they looking to be, do they want to be in a rural community? Do they look at it as a stepping stone, that sort of thing? And those are questions I'm sure Michelle Endicott looks through among many other moving parts, but I wanted to mention that. I did want to tell a story of how I became interested in the PUD. My father, Bud Lewis, tragically died at age 37 many years ago. He was an engineer for Simpson. He was one of the first methods analysts, if that makes any, if anyone understands that. So leaving a 34-year-old widow, my mother, Dixie Lewis, now Dixie Burnett, not only grieving, but she had to support herself and 3 children. Well, what she ended up doing was she went downtown and knocked on doors looking for a job. She ended up knocking on KMAS. Bruce Jorgensen, who started KMAS with his partner Bob Sheets, who's I'm not sure how I can related to Brianna. Anyway, when I retired and came back, I saw that Bruce was a PUD commissioner. I thought, well, that's not far away. Went over there because I wanted to thank him for being so kind to our family. And by the way, Bob Sheets was very kind to my mother also. So I did, but during the meeting, I was like, oh, wow, this is very interesting. And I've been going to meetings ever since. And my time is up again.
Thank you, Randy. Brownie, you have 2 minutes.
Again, thank you guys for being here and paying attention and watching these videos, trying to take the time to get to know us. For those of you that already know me, you guys know that Mason County is where I love and where I plan to live forever. And as a PUD3 commissioner, I will always be approachable. I will always listen to your guys' input, and I will always have your best interest at heart. Thanks for taking the time.
Move on to Julie. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll be brief as well. Again, I'd like to reiterate that I want to serve you. My career in procurement has set me up well to be your commissioner. And I believe that relationships are the key to getting things done. And I'm the best candidate to forge those relationships between you and the PUD and the many organizations that they work with. I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves and get down to the nitty-gritty. I like to gather information and make informed decisions. I want what is best for the community, and I'd appreciate it if you'd vote for me. You won't be sorry.
Thank you all for joining us and sharing your perspective and your platform for the role of Mason County PUD Commissioner District 1. We do appreciate your willingness to serve our community through elected office, and best of luck to each of you in the primaries.
It is my pleasure to introduce candidates for Mason County Commissioner District 3. Welcome Sharon Trask and Mark Carlson. We also extended an invitation to Miguel Gutierrez, who did not respond.
Thank you both for your willingness to participate in this event and for your willingness to serve our community. We'll begin with introductory statements. You'll each have 2 minutes. Sharon, as your name is listed first on the ballot, we'll begin with you, and your time begins now.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to come here and introduce myself again to Mason County, especially Mason County District 3, as we're going into the primaries. I have been a commissioner for 3.5 years and have loved every minute of it. My parents raised me to have a service spirit, and this is one of the ways that I can do that, along with being on many of the other boards. I've also I've lived in Mason County since 2004. We moved here from Arizona. I was born and raised in Colorado, so I'm a farm girl. And we've had lots of fun on the farm, let's say. It was quite the experience growing up that way, growing up on the farm, and also through my life, I've learned how to serve people and how much pleasure that gives me to be able to help people in need. I was also in the House. I worked for the House Legislature for 7 years and have loved and I loved every minute of that. It was quite the experience learning the system, knowing how it works at the state level, and being able to bring those skills to Mason County to help me move forward and help Mason County as we move forward. So I'll just close up real quick. My name is Sharon Trask, running for re-election as your Mason County Commissioner District 3. It would be my pleasure to serve you again for another 4 years.
Great, thank you so much, Sharon. Mark, you're up next. You also have 2 minutes for your introduction.
What if I need 5?
Well, you get 2, you better condense.
Hi, I'm Mark Carlson. I'm running for Mason County Commissioner District Number 3. I come from a very extensive background in working construction and also the white collar world, owning my own business for the last 30 years. I started out at a very young age building infrastructure with my dad down in Southern California at a very young age. I volunteered most of my life on a lot of things, being in service organizations when I was young. I've been a military veteran, United States Marine Corps infantry for 4 years. When I got out of the military, I went back into the building industry, started building homes and developing property, and eventually went into selling yellow page ads and got into real estate in my own business when I decided back in '92 it was time to start doing some things for myself. I've been the governor of our Moose Lodge here in town. I've belonged to the Shelton Elks. I've belonged to the Shelton Eagles. I've also been on the board of our water company here where I live in my district, where I replaced a $6.5 million water system for $880,000, saving our residents over $5.5 million. I recently retired and had another calling. That calling was to run for county commissioner and bring a business sense back to our community. With that, I will say that again, I am Mark Carlson and I'm running for Mason County Commissioner District Number 3, and I would appreciate your vote and support. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We'll now move into the questions that we have prepared for you. Sharon provided her introduction first. Mark, you'll answer this first. You'll have 90 seconds to respond. The median house price in Mason County is $410,000. Meanwhile, the median household income is $60,565. With a commonly accepted household budget of 30% of gross income, this prices much of the workforce out of the market. What is the county's role in providing access to the workforce housing? Mark, you have 90 seconds.
The reason that our housing industry is out of balance now is because after the past few decades of growth management, we have run most of our general contractors, building contractors out of the county. My plan would be to minimize the problems that you have dealing with the building department taking so long to get your building permits out and allowing you to move forward, giving you incentives to come back and start building in our community, both commercial and residential, along with low-income housing, because without building, we are going to be stagnant for years. We are headed for a recession at the current time, and so we're going to be required to have more incentives to get more builders over here, and that will be my biggest goal. I've been a builder myself. I've been run out of here as a builder from our commissioners before due to the lack of getting our Growth Management Act here enacted in time. So I know the frustrations that it takes to get it going. As far as the prices going up until we start building, they're not going to stabilize, nor will they come down.
Thank you, Mark. Sharon, the question is, the median house price in Mason County is $410,000. Meanwhile, the median household income is $60,565. With a commonly accepted household budget of 30% of gross income, this prices much of the workforce out of the market. What is the county's role in providing access to the workforce housing? Sharon, you have 90 seconds.
All right, thank you, John. So it's pretty cool. During the past 3.5 years, we've been able to cut the permit time drastically. I think we were up to 180 days and now we're down to about 3 weeks, which is fantastic. We have a new system for our builders. Everything is becoming more electronic. So you can submit your plans, you can go on, you can schedule your permits, your inspections, things like that. So things are a lot better than they were when I took office. And it was pretty cool. We were driving around this weekend looking at things, and it was awesome to see all the new building that's going in just District 3. That doesn't include like the Belfair area where we have a lot of more apartments going in up there, more apartments, more houses being built. And so this will help provide more homes for our people that live in District 3 and throughout Mason County. Things are getting better. And I couldn't say, well, I am so proud of our building department. They've changed things, they're making things easier, and we're providing the tools that they need to make it easier.
Thank you, Sharon. Mark, any last thoughts on the subject? You have 90 seconds, or excuse me, 30 seconds to respond.
As I recall, when our last commissioner left, our building times were down to about 2 weeks, our building permits. They have skyrocketed up to 1 month to get your permits in, to get an appointment to turn them in, and 90 days to get them back in. I have worked with quite a few developers in my area that are so frustrated with the amount of time that it takes. We are not down to this 3-week process. We are more than that.
Thank you, Mark. Moving on to the next question. Sharon, this will go to you first. The lack of space at the jail continues to be a topic of discussion for both Mason County and the city of Shelton. Please share your thoughts on a path forward with specifics such as funding. You have 90 seconds for your response.
Great, thank you for that, Heidi. This is definitely an issue. I believe that we've got a long way to go on this one, and it's not going to be an easy fix. I'm part of the Washington State Association of Counties, the Legislative Steering Committee, and on there, one of the big topics throughout the entire state is jails and spaces, and how I don't know, most of our jails were built back in the 90s or back in the 80s, and so they're not real user friendly anymore. There's also an issue with hiring people. So there's so many different pieces to this puzzle that we need to work on. We are working on that. And like I said, it's not going to be an easy fix, but it's something that we are working toward. Our jail, our sheriff's office, they're working with the commissioners to help us find solutions to these issues. We've provided, there are also other updates that we've built for the jail. So now they have more access to like getting to the courthouse and things like that. So like I said, it's not an easy fix. It's not going to be quick, but we'll get there.
Thank you, Sharon. Mark, again, the question is, the lack of space at the jail continues to be a topic of discussion for both Mason County and the city of Shelton. Please share your thoughts on a path forward with specifics such as funding.
Well, as long as we're going to be reactive instead of proactive on the jail, the only thing we're ever going to do is put a Band-Aid on the immediate problem like it's always been happening. We need to look out into the future to see what we need 20, 30 years down the road, because when we get down there, these Band-Aids will have covered that cost, plus we will still need our jail problem. If we keep going out and borrowing money to put private sewers across other people's property, we're never going to have the borrowing capacity to go out and build what we actually need that's going to last us for a long time in our community to take care of that problem. Our jails have been a problem since I moved here, in 1987. They're still a problem here in 2022. It's because of the continued Band-Aids that we've put on, the bad loans that we've taken out for ridiculous things, such as our Belfair sewer extension. And also that what that does is that lowers our capability of going out and borrowing money to get what we need done. And until we do that and stop that, it's not going to happen. We do need more jails. We do not need Band-Aids. We need to be proactive instead of reactive and get this mission accomplished.
Thank you, Mark. Sharon, do you want to wrap things up? If so, you have 30 seconds.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, this is a problem. And I honestly, I don't feel like we're putting Band-Aids, as you said. We are working to solve the issue. And like I said, it's not just a Mason County issue. It's statewide. Every county is having the same problems. There are other solutions that we're looking into. And so I would just say, stay tuned. More help is on the way.
Thank you, Sharon. Sharon, this next question is going to go to you here. Other than the economy, what do you see as the most important priority for Mason County, and how would you address it?
Thank you for that one. That's a good question as well. You guys are stacking us with good ones. Well, I would say there's not just one main concern other than the economy. If you drive around, you'll see that we have problems with our mental health. And during the last 2 years, things have not gotten too much better because we were very restricted into what we can do. One of the things that what we are working on, and I'm part of, is a homelessness task force, working with the city, our nonprofits, members of the community, and businesses to find solutions to helping people that need our help the most. It's easy to say we need to help those that need our help, but how do we do that? It's actions. It's not just talking about it, it's actions. And this task force is one of those actions that we're working on right now. We can make it, we'll make it work. And it's exciting to see how many people in the community are excited to be a part of this task force as well. So I would say, another one, stay tuned, but things are happening.
Thank you, Sharon. Other than the economy, what do you see as the most important priority for Mason County, and how would you address it? You have 90 seconds.
Well, the most important problem that we have in the county is not one problem, it's everything. We need to revamp, and we need to start by giving our law enforcement more help by hiring more deputies, getting them out into our neighborhoods to slow down this drug use to where you have 2 o'clock in the morning, people driving down the street to 3 or 4 houses to get their drugs so that they can continue stealing from you on the way home. Some of the other problems that we have that are faced with that are the mental health issues. And I don't really want to stay tuned to figure out what's going on. I want to dive in and fix these problems. That's what I've done all my life. When you have a problem, you fix the problem. You have 2 problems, you fix 2. You have 10, you work on all 10 of them, and you don't stay tuned because they start falling like dominoes and you finally end up getting your missions clean. You go to other areas that have fixed their problems already, find out what they've done, you start addressing that, you imply it here to get those things done. So in order to get it done also falls back on getting affordable housing for these people that don't have places to stay and they need places to get them off the street. But I think our biggest and most items that we need is to get more cops on the payroll, get them out in these communities so that we can fix our problems that we have.
Thank you, Mark. Sharon, you have 30 seconds, if you'd like it.
All right, thank you. I'll jump on it. So you're right, Mark. It's not a stay tuned. It's a watch and see what we're doing. I wouldn't say it's a stay tuned. I would say the actions speak louder than words. And you can see the actions that we're doing as a team. It's not a one person can't fix it. It takes a team. And I believe that we've got a strong team that's working on this problem. Law enforcement's another thing that's another state issue that we need to fix because our law enforcement can't do it the way that it is.
Thank you, Sharon. This will be the final question that we have for the two of you before we let you off the hook. Mark, you'll go ahead and go first with this one. You'll have 90 seconds. The question is, given the opportunity, what policy or procedure would you implement or revoke at the county? You have 90 seconds.
What policy would I revoke at the county or change? Is that the question?
Yes.
Well, I've changed the way our building department works. It's pathetic. It should not take you the amount of time that it takes you to get a building permit. When you take in a permit for a manufactured home, that house is built, it takes 9 nails. Why does it take you 3 months to get it out of there? And when you go in and you put in an engineered set of plans, why would it take you 6 months or 3 months to get an engineered set of plans out of our community? Along with that, the Growth Management Act needs to be attacked because it hasn't been dealt with since it's been issued. We haven't had any properties that have been rezoned. There's nothing in the growth circle that's been accomplished to make that work like it was supposed to work. So it isn't cost effective for me to own 3 to 5 acres in one area of town where I got to bring in a water line for 1.5 miles or 2 to develop my properties. I can't do that. That would be a fast way for the county or city to get a return on their investment and be able to move forward and go out from there. I own nothing. I want to disclose that I would benefit from getting this done. I am not doing this for me. I am doing this for us, the people of our county, because it is not being addressed. It is not being done at the current time.
Thank you, Mark. Sharon, you'll also have 90 seconds to respond. Given the opportunity, what policy or procedure would you implement or revoke at the county?
That's a good one. I can't think of any that I would revoke. Are we perfect? Is government perfect? I would say probably not. I think Mark would agree with me on that one. But one thing that we are doing is we are becoming more and more transparent. We've implemented a system where people will, when you make a public records request, before that request was not visible so that others, you had to re-request it. But now we have a program where you can go online, you can look at the records that have been requested, and then you can actually go in and look at those records. It's pretty enlightening. If you're interested in how a government can be more transparent, that's one way that we're handling that. Another thing that I've been working on and that has come about now is to take a look at the salaries. Our non-represented, their salaries have not been looked at for, I've heard from some people saying decades. And so right now we are taking a look at those so that we can retain our employees and keep them. As you know, it's unions are, their salaries are reviewed every time that the contract is renewed, but are non-represented. They finally have someone in the commission that really wants to take a look at those. And I'm pretty excited about that.
Great, thank you. Mark, any last thoughts on the subject? If so, you have 30 seconds.
Well, I think that instead of waiting to see what's happening, we need to have a what have we got done. I haven't seen much of what we've got done, especially in the last 3.5 years. The wait and see and the build it and they will come is not something that I think that we should be spending our tax dollars on and putting them in jeopardy. So as far as that goes, I appreciate this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate you both coming. We now have time for our closing statements. As Sharon, you had your opening statement first. Mark will allow you to have your closing statement first, so you have 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. Hi, once again, I'm Mark Carlson. I want to thank you guys for having this meeting and asking me to come to it. My goals for our future in the county is to get equal respect between the citizens and government. When you go in to find out what you can do, I don't want you walking out wondering what happened. I want you to get to a yes solution for what you have. After all, you are the taxpayer and you are paying all these people's salary. Citizen input, I do not think that things should happen around the county where you just find out about them after the fact. I want things to happen out here to where you have input in it and where you need to know what's happening. Fiscal responsibility in this county is not putting sewers across private property that has no chance or no plans for development in there, which puts us in a hole. Private property rights goes back to the Growth Management Act. I want to attack that and get your property values back to where they should be and allow you to do more things on your property for you and for your family. You cannot at the current time break off an acre of your property, let your son or daughter live on it. That's not going to happen. I want to change that. Law enforcement, like I said, we're understaffed. We need officers back out in our communities, in the neighborhoods, so that they can get a handle on what's going on, slow down the drug traffic, slow down the thefts that are happening in here. We also need to look forward to that 30 years from now, what we need for a jail, start working back so that we can get that started getting that accomplished without putting one Band-Aid on another to get the problems fixed. Be proactive versus reactive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Sharon, now you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
All right. Thank you guys so much for putting this together. It has been a lot of fun and I've really enjoyed being able to answer your questions for you. Looking forward for the next 4 years, I've accomplished so much in the past 3.5 years. We have a new fleet so our officers and our employees have new vehicles to drive. That hasn't happened in, oh gosh, probably 10 years or so. Some of the cars were green and it wasn't because that was the color of their paint. So now they have new vehicles to drive and that's keeping our officers and our employees safer. I've accomplished so many new things or exciting things, being able to work with the businesses to get them so that they've been able to make it through these past 2 years of struggle, the COVID adventure, so we call it. There's much more to do, and there's much more that I can do. At the state level, I have been able to stop a lot of bad bills with the help of the Legislative Steering Committee through WASAC, the Washington Association of Counties. Strong group, and we're able to affect change at the state level so that we're not hit hard at the county level or the city level. The relationship between the city and the county has improved since I've been in. And that's not because you just sit back, you work at it. And I have been and will continue to be a working commissioner, working for the people, for you, to make sure that you're protected, your rights are protected, and that we move together as a team for Mason County. Thank you again. And I've enjoyed my time. I'm Sharon Trask, and I would appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Sharon. This concludes our questions for the candidates for Mason County Commissioner District 3. Thank you both for joining us, and we wish both of you best luck in the primaries. It is my pleasure to introduce the candidates for the 35th Legislative District, Position 2. A warm welcome to Tiffany Severick, Travis Couture, Sandy Kaiser, and Patty Case.
Our appreciation to each and every one of you for your willingness to participate in this event and to serve our community. We'll begin with our introductory statements. You'll have 2 minutes. Tiffany, As your name is listed first here on the ballot, we'll begin with you, and your time begins now.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Severick, running for the open seat in the 35th Legislative District. I'm a lifelong Thurston County resident, small business owner, and school board member. My priorities are based on my background and experience, and my top priority is the state budget and taxes. I spent many years in the state legislature writing state laws, rules, and budgets for the largest administration in our state. It was there that I participated in a process called Priorities of the Government. During our last recession, we had to start the budget at zero and go up from there. So I know firsthand that we can cut spending, continue to provide services that so many people rely on, and still cut taxes. With record inflation right now, our state needs to learn to live within its means and provide tax relief to our struggling residents and small business owners. My second priority is housing. After I left state service, I started a small business consulting on taxes, personal finances, and investing in real estate. I know the industry well, and I know why our homes are so unaffordable in Washington state. A big part of that is due to government regulations. And third, I'm a school board director, and my third priority, not in any order, is education. I'd like to return local control to our school boards, focus our curriculum on reading, writing, and math over divisive politics, and return parents' rights to their children's education. I'd also like to see all of our students graduate prepared for their next steps in life, whether it's college, work, military, trade school, or entrepreneurship. I have the experience and background necessary for this job, and I look forward to working with our community to get some solutions in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Travis, you now have 2 minutes.
Hello, everybody. I'm Travis Couture. I'm a proud veteran. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran. I served on submarines, USS Alabama and Nebraska. And I now work for Lockheed Martin, space systems company, where I can continue my service and work with the Navy and the Marine Corps every day. I'm a program manager, and I assist in the management of over $1 billion in strategic defense assets, an effort for around 300 employees. And so it's a job I'm really proud to do. I live in Mason County up in Allen, and all 4 of my kids attend schools in North Mason, between kindergarten and high school. And so education is also a big priority of mine. But another big priority of mine is public safety. And I like to say that my campaign is built upon our shared values. We want to feel safe. We want to see our kids get a good education. We want to provide for our families and run our businesses, and we want to enjoy our freedoms. So with those simple priorities, that's why I launched my campaign. I want to see a more robust public safety. I think we need to restore public safety. I think that we need to do something more about homelessness. I think we need to have better educational outcomes in our schools, especially in the 35th district. And I also believe that rural districts like ours, which the 35th is about this, it's huge, and it covers Kitsap, Mason, and Thurston counties, all rural territories. And I really think that those rural values need to be better represented in Olympia. And I look forward to going to Olympia and representing those rural values and traditions. Thank you.
Andy, you now have 2 minutes, please.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity. The chamber has been wonderful to work with. I'm Sandy Kaiser. I'm the proud daughter of 4 generations of Washington farmers, loggers. I'm a Democrat running for the same position in the 35th. I live just over the county line in rural Thurston County. I'm running because I see how over the years, our rural communities have been falling farther and farther behind the big cities in terms of opportunity, quality of our schools, healthcare, and jobs. And I know this has got to change. I'm new to politics, but I'm not new to public service. I served our nation overseas for 25 years as a foreign service officer, promoting American security, products, and human rights around the world. I left that job with the equivalent rank of Vice Admiral in 2011. I came back to my home in Washington State with my 2 teenagers and my husband. I then took a job at the Department of Natural Resources, where I served as communications director and a senior advisor, where I got a really deep and broad understanding of our precious local waterways and forests. I also served as vice president at the Evergreen State College, where we serve students, including thousands of veterans who sometimes get ignored by traditional higher education. I'm currently vice president of the board of the Capital Land Trust, which preserves working forests, farmlands, and natural areas in mostly Mason and Thurston County. I believe in hard work, love of family, community, and country, and in making sure that everybody in our rural district gets the same opportunities for success as in other parts of the state. That means we need a fair tax system that does not unfairly burden our seniors and our working families. We need better conditions for local business to thrive. We need more family wage jobs. We've got to improve our schools. And it's critically important that we fund our local sheriffs and first responders so they can be there in an hour of need. I'm a common sense Democrat focused on rural and local issues.
Thank you, Sandy. Patty, you now have your 2 minutes for your opening statement, please.
Thanks so much, John, and thanks to the Shelton-Mason County Chamber of Commerce for this great opportunity. I am sitting on the side of the road on Highway 106, so hopefully we will make it through this this forum without getting hit. Welcome to summer in the Pacific Northwest, right? You all know me. I'm Patty Case. I grew up in Mason County, graduated from Shelton High School, and I am running because I love this place, and yet it's broken. I think we all know it's broken, and we all have our own stories about why it's broken. Of course, first I want to mention our law enforcement situation. In 2021, the democratically led state legislature passed not one, not two, but 11 different laws that handcuff our law enforcement officers. That needs to stop. We need to support our law enforcement officers. Public safety is a basic expectation that we have of our government, and we are failing our people at this time. So we need to turn that around, but we also need to turn around the morale, because we are in a situation where we're not able to recruit new law enforcement officers here in Washington State. Secondly, we had a $15 billion surplus in the legislature in 2022, and we spent it all. We need to be spending more efficiently, and we need to be spending more effectively. In fact, 36 other states have either proposed or enacted some kind of tax relief for their citizens, and yet our governor has no intention of doing such a thing. We need to put money back in our citizens' pockets.
Thank you, Patty.
We'll now move into questions that we've prepared for you. Each of you will have 90 seconds to respond. Travis, you'll field this question first. As such, you'll also get 30 seconds at the end to respond with any final words on the topic. This question is about childcare, which continues to be a challenge facing many families. With rising costs and increasing limited availability, some parents are forced to stay home rather than return to the workplace. Washington state regulations for childcare facilities have been identified as a significant barrier with onerous licensing and education requirements. What is the legislature's role in addressing this issue? You have 90 seconds.
Yeah, thank you for that question. You know, as a dad with 4 kids, and all different ages between 4 years old and 16 years old. You know, I'll just say personally, I live this. You know, me and Julie, we are a single income family. She has to be a stay-at-home mom. So it is really a struggle to find good, affordable childcare in this state. And a lot of it is because of the regulations that get passed down from the state level. Some of those regulations are needed, though, because we do need to make sure that wherever we send our kids, that they're protected, and you're not just sending them anywhere. However, some things are very costly, and and just they don't make any sense. And so we have to do a lot more to try to help out families, especially in these times with all the high inflation. Everything gets to the grocery store on a truck, and I like to think of the single mom. How is she going to go to work every day paying almost $6 a gallon in gasoline, and then everything she has to buy for her kids at the store is also an inflated price? We need tax relief for those people, sales tax relief, property tax relief. We need to start thinking about people like that and do a lot better as far as how government can make things more efficient. Thanks.
Thank you, Travis. Sandy, same question to you. Washington state regulations for childcare facilities have been identified as a significant barrier with onerous licensing and educational requirements. What do you believe the legislature's role is in addressing this issue? You have 90 seconds.
It's very interesting that when you talk to economic development folks in Mason and Thurston and Kitsap, they cite childcare challenges as a major impediment to economic growth in our region. This is something we've really got to figure out. In most countries, governments have figured it out, and they do offer support to families so that if folks do want to get into the workforce, they can do that. It's absolutely essential that we streamline the process and that we make it easier, because what we have now is a situation where people do workarounds. Most people can't afford straight up, to afford to pay for it. So what they do is they work out an arrangement with family or relatives that maybe some of the time works really well, but other times it doesn't. So we really, as part of all the things we should be doing to encourage more investment in our region, is really advocate very strongly for streamlining some of the ways that childcare operations are licensed and overseen.
Thank you, Sandy. Patty, same question to you. Washington state regulations for childcare facilities have been identified as a significant barrier with onerous licensing and educational requirements. What do you believe the legislature's role is in addressing this issue?
Thanks, Heidi. It's interesting that we talk about the number of regulations around childcare. We talk about the number of regulations around all sorts of things. And yet, are those regulations making the situation better? Certainly not in this case. So this is one area where I think government could be more efficient, perhaps scale back the regulations. And yes, of course, we want our children to be safe. And yet, I think that parents have a role in ensuring that our children are safe as well. Even my children now are 30 and 32 years old. One of them has children of his own. And yet, then as now, these regulatory measures have the effect of actually making us want to go around them. They make us want to circumvent them. And that's not good regulation. We need to have parents in the room when we're regulating these kinds of things. And we need to have regulations that actually work on the ground for these individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Tiffany, same question for you. Washington state regulations for childcare facilities have been identified as a significant barrier with onerous licensing and educational requirements. What do you believe is the legislature's role in addressing this issue?
This is such a good question because I know how important it is. Before I was a school board director for a public school district, I was a board director at a private Christian school, and we had a licensed daycare facility on site. Anytime we closed school for a day, we had to open our daycare because I know how important it is for our parents to have reliable place to take their children every day. And it's also a big issue as a school board director. We can't, these half days of school, we have to make sure our local providers are available to take up these kids in the afternoons. So this is a really big issue for parents. And I would agree with the previous comments that yes, regulation is a big issue. As serving on the board for a daycare, I understand how many times these regulations impacted us based on, well, we can't have this many kids because we don't have the staff for it today. And it was constant. And I think that we need to address this with like someone said, with parents in the room and daycare providers in the room, and this needs to be worked on as a community, and less regulations, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Travis, any last thoughts on the subject? If so, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, a lot of good thoughts and comments there just now, and I think that it's kind of a philosophical thing. If you want to tackle kind of onerous regulations, which we have a lot of in this state, you need a philosophical change. You need a more thought, a track towards more limited and smaller government. And we haven't had that in a very long time. There's not enough balance in our legislature today. And a lot of the times the majority party isn't listening to, in this case, parents and daycare providers, but as Patty said, in a lot of other ways too, they're not listening to the experts, like our law enforcement, for example.
Thank you, Travis. Moving on to our next question. Sandy, this one will go to you first. Climate change is a headline issue, and the green energy policies continue to be brought forward, yet Washington State does not recognize hydroelectricity as renewable. Do you believe that it should be considered renewable? Why or why not? You have 90 seconds.
Well, thank you, John, for that. It is such an incredibly important issue because we know climate change is indeed real, and we have to figure out the best way to focus on it in our particular part of the state. I absolutely do consider hydropower a renewable, carbon-free resource. I think we have been blessed with it. It is not without its own complications, just as nuclear power, for example, or the cost of solar. These are really complicated issues that we really have to take a really hard look at. And that's why on the issue of whether the state should be considering the removal of the Snake River dams, it's a very complicated issue with a lot of pluses and minuses on both sides, even though this is ultimately going to be a federal decision. It's really important as we make the transition to green energy, and it will come one way or another, that we make sure we're not doing this on the backs of workers in our region. And that means as we make this transformation, we need to make sure that people are receiving great resources for training, for adaptation, and that they are not paying an unduly heavy price as we make this transition, which is going to happen sooner or later.
Patty, climate change is a headline issue, and the green energy policies continue to be brought forward. Yet, Washington State does not recognize hydroelectricity as renewable. Do you believe that it should be considered renewable? Why or why not? You have 90 seconds.
Thanks very much for the question, John. Yes, absolutely. Hydroelectricity should be considered as a renewable resource in this state, and in this state of all states where we have so much water. We need to take advantage of that. We need to be able to take full advantage of it. To the broader question around climate change, we are the solution here in this state. Half of our state is forested, and forests provide for carbon sequestration and carbon storage. We need to be conserving those resources, but we also need to be using those resources because carbon stored in long-lived wood products is still carbon stored. We have the solution here in Washington State, and yet we've gone completely overboard in trying to create other solutions that really are akin to trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. One of the most recent things, of course, is the Climate Commitment Act. And that, of course, is not going to go into effect until January 1st after the election. But that's going to create even higher gas prices here in Washington. And very unfortunately, in our rural areas where we drive farther in order to get to work. We need some real solutions, but we need to keep in mind our solutions here in Washington State. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Tiffany, climate change is a headline issue, and green energy policies continue to be brought forward. Yet, Washington State does not recognize hydroelectricity as renewable. Do you believe it should be considered renewable? Why or why not?
Yes, as the previous two replied, it should be considered renewable. I agree with that. As for the greater issue of green energy policies and climate change, I'd like to see a bigger discussion involving more people because it's affecting so many business owners and stakeholders, and we're not having that greater conversation. We have dictates coming down and it's falling on all of our residents in the form of higher prices, and it's affecting our workers. And we're seeing the effects of it around the world right now. And I do think we need to get more stakeholder involvement in the bigger issue of green energy policies and climate change.
Thank you, Tiffany. Travis, you'll have 90 seconds. Climate change is a headline issue and green energy policies continue to be brought forward, yet Washington State does not recognize hydroelectricity as renewable. Do you believe that it should be considered renewable? Why or why not?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I agree with everyone else that hydroelectricity should be considered renewable, and I've believed that for a very long time. The fact that it isn't is kind of a failure of the majority party in our state government right now. And it really kind of boils down to this partisan politics. And I mean, right now, yes, the inflation is hitting, but we're not making things any better. We need to take an approach like a doctor and say, first, do no harm, because right now, during these high inflationary times, we're getting, higher gas prices and higher prices everywhere due to things like a low carbon fuel standard that was passed. And in the midst of an affordable housing crisis where Washington State is short like 250,000 homes, in the last legislative session, they made it more expensive, and they're trying to ban natural gas. They're trying to ban internal combustion engines. I don't think this is where a majority of Washington wants to go, and it's costing us a lot of money and a lot of pain, especially in our rural communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Sandy, any last thoughts on the subject? If so, you have 30 seconds.
Sure thing. Thank you, John. I would just note that climate change is really being felt very, very much in our district right now in terms of our business. Our friends at Taylor Shellfish are increasingly concerned about ocean acidification, because what that does is it means that the shells don't set on the shellfish that we export from our region. It's becoming a greater and greater problem and concern, not only for our friends at Taylor, but other shellfish producers, including the tribes, are seeing this. So it's not really an abstract issue. It's actually happening right here now. And it's something that we have to take on board when we consider all kinds of different options for green energy.
Thank you. Patty, you'll go first on this question. As such, you'll also get 30 seconds at the end to respond. Affordable and workforce housing is a constant hot topic with housing prices soaring. Many point towards green building policies as driving up the costs. Do you believe there can be a balance of the two? If so, how? And if not, why? You have 90 seconds.
Thank you, Heidi. 97% of single-family housing in the United States is built with wood. This is a great thing for those of us who live in a timber-rich community like our own. And as far as I'm concerned, we're doing it right here. We have affordable materials and that are locally sourced, so on. But we're creating all sorts of labyrinthine regulations that make this more complicated for everyone. And that goes to workforce housing, it goes to temporary housing, it goes to transitional housing, and so on and so forth. We're not moving people through the scale, and we do have a crisis, and we're going to continue to have a crisis. As far as I'm concerned, there are several elements to this. One is our growth management and other land use laws. We need to work on those. We need to work at the other end to ensure that people are moving through the scale. And we have to do our part to save money in this state so that we don't have these high inflationary times and run into these high interest rates. We're in a mess and we need to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Tiffany, again, affordable and workforce housing is a constant hot topic with housing prices soaring. Many point towards green building policies is driving up the costs. Do you believe that there can be a balance of the two?
Definitely. Housing is obviously one of my top priorities, and there's several factors at play here. We first of all need to let people build on their own land that they currently own. And I know that every county department has their own land use planning, and it's not consistent across the board. I know people who have been waiting 6 years through the Thurston County permitting process. And I know Mason County is significantly less. So there is a balance. We just need to find it. And it's not only with building and green building policies, there are other housing issues such as rentals. And that's something I've been working with because I'm a landlord myself, and I know many small landlords, and I'm part of different groups. And the biggest issue that happened to rise rents in recent years was the legislature imposing new, very risky burdens and expensive burdens on landlords that is causing most of them to sell off their properties with reduced supply. That just automatically increases rents. So housing is more than just building, it is across the board, and we need to address all issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Travis, again, many point towards green building policies is driving up the costs. Do you believe that there can be a balance of the two?
Yeah, and I like that question because it kind of gets back to something I was saying earlier, and that is there isn't enough balance in our state government right now, and we've kind of flowed, radically to one side. And you can do, walk and chew gum at the same time successfully, but right now we're so far to one side. And I mean, right now the affordable homes doesn't mean just subsidized housing. It means like housing for anybody. And in Mason County, like over 80% of people can't afford the median home price of a new home. And in Kitsap County, the median home price is $600,000 or more. I mean, it's the dream of home ownership, the American dream of home ownership is less attainable in Washington state than it has been for a very, very, very long time. And we need to do a lot better to bring that balance back and to have some common sense, because at the end of the day, I think a lot of people in our district and maybe a lot of people in the chamber and business owners say, you know what, this isn't that hard. This isn't rocket science. And I would agree. And I think that good government isn't rocket science, and we have to bring some balance back to the state legislature and start having some common sense about these things so we can stop punishing our own people. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy, 90 seconds to you. Also, affordable and workforce housing is a constant hot topic with housing prices soaring. Many point towards green building policies is driving up the costs. Do you believe there can be a balance between the two?
I think the housing issue is a really important one. As I've been out talking to voters, I've met a lot of folks who have moved recently to our region from Pierce and King counties. And they see us, of course, as affordable. But the reality is that for most of our residents, it's not working. Our kids want to live here, but many of them can't afford it. So we really need to be looking at different incentives to do what they do in a lot of places, which is figure out ways to incentivize filling in building lots in towns. That we have these great timber towns like Rochester and Shelton. There's ways we can build more housing, more multifamily housing in town that of course makes it easier to get to school and work, things like that. I really support tax incentives for builders that are ready to do this kind of work, not only in towns, but out, and streamlining the permit process as well. I also really strongly believe that we need to make it easier for folks to build on their own property, whether it's a mother-in-law, father-in-law unit, or a unit for the kids. Many of us have a little bit of land, and that's part of our rural character. And I think folks should be encouraged to use those properties, and we should make it easier for them to do so.
Thank you, Sandy. Patty, 30 seconds if you have any final thoughts on the issue.
I do, thank you. So certainly affordable housing is hard enough without some of the additional requirements around green energy and so on. Probably the latest and as far as I'm concerned, the most egregious issue that we're dealing with is the Building Codes Council at the state, which is an appointed body, is actually trying to ban natural gas in homes going forward. And we're not ready for that. Our state is not ready. And that's an abuse of power as far as I'm concerned. I want to work to stop.
Thank you, Patty. Here's our last question for the four of you. Tiffany, we're going to have you go first, and then we'll give you 30 seconds after everyone else has answered. Mason County has a vast natural resources. We are fortunate to have fire season less severe than recent years. However, issues around how we fund wildfire prevention and response will still be faced by the legislator in coming years. Do you believe the legislation is prioritizing this issue appropriately? You have 90 seconds.
Well, I have to admit that I don't know what the current policy is on this, but I do believe in funding our priorities, and this is a priority, absolutely. Excuse me. We have so much money in the state, and we spend it on special interests and other issues. Every year there are new programs that we're funding, and we're not funding our priorities, and this is one of them, and this is something I would commit to as well. So while I don't understand the issue, it's something I would like to learn more about, and I'm committed to funding it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Travis, Mason County has vast natural resources. We are fortunate to have a fire season less severe than in recent years. However, issues around how we fund wildfire prevention and response will still be faced by the legislator in coming years. Do you believe that the legislature is prioritizing this issue appropriately? You have 90 seconds.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I think it's really important. It is, less this year than it has been in previous years, but I think, I kind of stand with everyone else, and we're sick of most summers having to breathe in the smog, from up north from wildfires. And it is heartbreaking to watch, people lose their property, their homes, their livestock, whatever it may be. And then to watch, the brave firefighters and volunteers to go have to fight those fires nearly every year. And I kind of stand on the side of we can either profit from our forests or we can let them burn and everyone can suffer as a result. And unfortunately, my view is that the state has kind of done the latter, where, we're not practicing good forest management to the point where we allow some of these fires to go out of control. And so I know that our representatives, like especially Dan Griffey, who's a firefighter, fought really hard to get funding with other legislators for new fire devices and everything else. And but it's tough, and it shouldn't be tough to fund things that are essential. We have to be able to fight wildfires in our state, and we have to be able to combat that. And I think that there's a belief that climate change is always the reason for these fires, but really I think it's bad forest management. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Sandy, you'll have 90 seconds.
Thanks for that. That's something I think about a lot after my years working at the Department of Natural Resources. I was on the front line of wildfire in 2014, 2015, and 2016, and those were some of the worst years we experienced in the state of Washington. Blessedly for us, most of that was on the east side of the state, but we have terrible potential in our own corner here for massive wildfire, especially if we have really hot, dry conditions for a long period of time. The problem we have right now in the state of Washington is we have a 19th century setup where we don't really fund up front the work we should be doing to ensure that we pay less on the back end. So in those terrible years, we didn't put much money into prevention, like forest health initiatives, for example, that would clear out a lot of that dead growth. And so then we end up paying through the nose because we have to bring in emergency crews from all over the country. And we're just like, it's just really not a good way to do things. So what the legislature should be doing is putting aside money every year for forest health treatment and for clearing out a lot of that undergrowth. as well as equipping small towns and small counties with the tools they need to be able to fight fire when it breaks out, because it will break out. Hopefully this year we're going to have not such a terrible season if the weather holds, but we can do a way far better job of preparing for fire on our landscapes. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandy. Patty, Mason County has a vast natural resources that we're fortunate to have a fire season less severe than in recent years. However, issues around how we fund wildfire protection response will still be faced by the legislator in coming years. Do you believe the legislators is prioritizing this issue appropriately? You have 90 seconds.
It's unfortunate that we're in a situation where we see and smell and suffer with the smoke all summer. Largely, that's coming from Eastern Washington, in addition to Canada. And yet, the legislature meets in January, and we've all forgotten as we're standing there in the rain at the state capitol. So, in 2021. Our industry and others helped Hillary Franz and the Department of Natural Resources pass a $125 million package to help update our systems and our equipment, and also to do additional forest health treatments. That's important, but it's not enough. Mark my words, we're going to be in a situation where we do have fire on the west side. And unfortunately, all of the resources at that point, typically August, September, all the resources are used up on the east side. So we need to continue to pound away at this at the state legislature to improve that system. We also need to convince the Department of Natural Resources and the federal forces to rely more on local talent and local knowledge in order to fight fires. We don't do that well here in Washington, and there are other better models. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Tiffany, you'll have any last thoughts on the subject? You have 30 seconds if you'd like.
Well, that was great, because I said I'd like to hear some more information on it, and I got some good responses. So I know the issue better now, and I would agree that any funding we can put towards prevention and forest management, that's money well spent, because after the fact it is so much more costly, but it's still, to me, a priority service, and I am fully on board with fully funding our priority services. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move into questions that you have prepared for another candidate. Each of you had the ability to select an opponent and prepare questions for them. If you were selected to answer a question, then you'll have 90 seconds to initially respond. The preparer of the question will then have 30 seconds to clarify. And then finally, you'll have 30 seconds for final thought. Patty, Sandy Kaiser prepared this question for you. Sandy's question is, many businesses that may be attracted to our region are currently guaranteeing reproductive rights to their employees through funded travel and other benefits. Regardless of current state law, do you believe that women should have the right to an abortion? You have 90 seconds for your response.
Thanks for that question. Frankly, I think that state law, both in the case of the legislature and in the case of the people, have spoken in the state of Washington and have protected abortion rights. I do believe that there is a lot of territory between not ever and all the time up until birth. And I do think that there's opportunity for all of us to have a sane conversation about reproductive rights here in the state of Washington. But again, Roe versus Wade and striking it down and all of that, that's a lot of rhetoric when both the legislature and the people here in Washington state have spoken. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy, you have 30 seconds if you'd like to respond.
Yeah, I was hoping that Patty, you could share your personal view on it, on the question.
Once again, I think the state of Washington has spoken in prior years, and I think we do have an opportunity to have conversation about reproductive rights, about abortion, about the right to life, all of those issues. We put labels on them, but I think we need to have a sane and reasonable conversation rather than routing one another out. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Sandy, Patty's prepared this question for you. You'll have 90 seconds to respond. And Patty's question is, the governor and your party leaders have refused to cut taxes for families despite record inflation and record budget surpluses. Will you vote to suspend the gas tax or cut the sales tax? You have 90 seconds.
Thank you for that. And that's a great question. And yes, I would vote to cut both of those taxes. I really truly believe that the state of Washington has a totally out of kilter tax system that unfairly burdens seniors on limited incomes and working families. It's really unconscionable. We really need to take a hard look at the way that the burden of taxes are distributed in our country. And a great start would be to look especially at gas tax and other consumption taxes. So yes, for me, that's on the table.
Thank you. Patty, you have 30 seconds to respond if you'd like.
I'm curious about that response, Sandy, because your party has voted repeatedly for the capital gains income tax when the people here in Washington have rejected it repeatedly. And so I'm curious how you fund the many priorities that your party has.
I really believe that a tax system that puts a 24% burden on the poorest people in the state, and where the top percentile are only paying 3%, is a little screwed up. I totally agree that an income tax is not an option. That has been voted down by the state many, many times. I'm really lucky to be in a party that is a big tent. My views on this are known. I have said this many times. We've got to figure out a fairer way to distribute the tax burden in the state of Washington.
Thank you. There were no questions submitted by Tiffany or Travis. Thus, this concludes the portion of the agenda. We'll now move into closing statements. You'll each have 2 minutes. Patty, as you went last in the introductions, you'll have the honor of going first.
Thanks very much. I'm Patty Case, and I'm running for state representative, 2nd position, 35th district, because I love this place and it's broken. I so badly want to fix it. And unlike a lot of folks who want to stand up at a podium and pound their fists about problems, I have solutions. I have solutions around cutting gas and sales tax, around moving the automobile sales tax portion over to fund our transportation projects. I have solutions around efficient, affordable government. That's a huge issue for us as we go forward. Our state is growing by leaps and bounds, and yet we have these record revenues coming in and we're spending it all, and we have nothing to show for it. It's really unfortunate. Our law enforcement, I mentioned this before, their hands are tied, and we need to ensure that they have the tools in place so that they can protect us, because that is their sworn duty. Finally, our children are, as I mentioned earlier, are languishing. We need to return power to our local school boards. That's why we elect them. But we also need a plan going forward. These kids stayed home for 1.5 years, and they are suffering, and they are having trouble catching up. I don't know how we're going to do this without a plan. And that's exactly what happened. We just came back to school without any plan in order to move forward. These kids really need some help moving forward. Thanks very much. I'm Patty Case.
Thank you, Patty. Sandy, closing remarks for you. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the chance to chat and say hello to everybody, that we see each other on the campaign trail once in a while, maybe at a parade or someplace. And they're all really fine people. I came home from the Foreign Service 11 years ago, back to my beloved Washington State. And I was so happy to be home. And yeah, we got some challenges. You know, the last few years have been super tough, especially on kids. But this is not a time for hand wringing. This is a time for action. This is a time of possibility for us. We're going to make our future. We're going to make government work better for everybody. We can do this, people. We're Americans. And when you see us in action, there's no nation on earth like us. And I believe there's no people like the ones in the 35th district. I think that I was thinking about a conversation I had yesterday with a local tribal official, very high ranking in one of our local tribes. And he was talking about this tendency for folks in both of our parties to kind of get stuck at the far ends. And he says, you know, those crazy people on the far ends of our parties, they meet in the middle. They bow around and they meet each other in the middle. And we don't want to be there. We don't want to be on those crazy ends of things. We want to be like rural neighbors that we are. We work together to figure things out. We work together to solve problems. And if I'm elected, that's my attitude. I'm going to work with everybody to make government work for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Travis, you're up next. 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Again, I'm Travis Couture. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran, and I'm a proud veteran, and I'm mission oriented. And so that's how I approach, not only the campaign, but how I will approach the work in the legislature as well. And why I got into this race is because of my 4 kids. And I really believe that the future that has been set up for them right now in this state is in jeopardy. And we need to do more in order to provide our kids and our families with a better future than our present situation. And that starts with our schools, which we didn't really get to talk about today. Our educational outcomes in the 35th district are less than 50% in English and reading and science, and less than 25% in math. And we have to do better. It's really important, if our kids want to live here and work here, that they receive a good education. It's really important to me also. I plastered it right all over my campaign signs. I'm a supporter of first responders, and our police have had a really hard time in the last few years. We need to start giving them in this state the respect that they deserve. And that means giving them all the funding, resources, tools, facilities, equipment that they need to do the job of keeping us safe. In Mason County, over 1,000 square miles with only a handful of deputies, it's not enough. We're a soft target for crime. And I'm proudly endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police Olympic Mountain Lodge, which is the local law enforcement here in Mason County, because I have a big passion to go to Olympia and solve those problems. And I also think that in these high inflationary times, we heard a lot about that today, but I think there's a lot more that we can do. And I think that's your house, and I don't own it, in your office, and I will work for you. And I can't wait to get started on the job. Thanks.
Thank you, Travis. Tiffany, last but not least, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
First of all, thank you for hosting us today. I appreciate having the chance to talk to all of you. I just want to say that I've mentioned my qualifications, and there aren't very many. I don't think there's anybody running for office this year outside of the 35th district, even with my experience of somebody who's written state budgets for years and knows that when we're being told we're cutting to the bone, I was looking around me saying, no, we're not. So there's not a lot of that insight into what's really going on behind the scenes. And I'm ready to point fingers and go after the budget and actually provide the services that our residents need, and cut taxes for people who really need tax relief at this moment. But what I'm most proud of is not only my qualifications, is the fact that as an elected school board member, I talk to anybody and everybody. I have so many people supporting me in this race because of how kind I've been to them. Even when I'm not able to help them because their issues are far bigger than the school board, I will talk to them and I will do my best to provide them with the help they need. So I don't always have the answers, but I believe in bringing our communities there to provide the solutions. And that's something I also learned in the legislature many years ago. The elected officials that I admired were the ones who were talking to their constituents and actually reflecting their values and speaking up for them. And that's what I want to do for the 35th district. Thank you.
Thank you.
This concludes the forum for the 35th Legislative District Candidates Position 2. Our appreciation to each of you for joining us and sharing your perspective on your platforms. Best of luck to you in the primaries.
This also concludes the 2022 primary election candidate forum. On behalf of the Shelton-Mason County Chamber and our partners at the North Mason Chamber, MasonWebTV powered by Hood Canal Communications, and John and his crew at the Shelton-Mason County Journal, thank you for taking the time to tune in. Ballots should begin hitting the mailboxes tomorrow. We encourage you to get your vote in.
The deadline is Tuesday, August 2nd. You can mail in your ballots or take it to the various drop box locations throughout the county. Thanks again and have a great evening.